Welcome to this explainer. Let's just dive right in, okay? Over the next few minutes, we're going to unpack what is, frankly, the technology race of the century. And I'm not just talking about some software updates here. No, this is a massive, multi-billion-dollar story packed with fierce corporate rivalries, unbelievable economic bets, and these huge breakthroughs that literally caught the entire world completely off guard. So we're going to trace this whole journey together, a journey that is fundamentally rewiring the global economy, how we work, and honestly, the entire future of technology as we know it.
Now, to really grasp exactly where we are today, we kind of have to hit rewind for a second. Think back to the absolute silence of 2018 and contrast that with the wild global gold rush we're living through right now. 8 years ago, almost nobody cared about AI. Seriously, we were all totally obsessed with our smartphones, right? Social media, the latest apps. Outside of a really tiny, super niche circle of computer scientists, the rest of us were entirely oblivious that the foundation for a massive, world-changing era had already been laid.
So the real beginning of our story actually kicks off in 2017. That's when researchers at Google invented something called the transformer architecture. You can think of it like this foundational engine that finally allowed computers to grasp human context. It was basically the digital equivalent of teaching a machine not just to recognize words, but to actually understand the sentence. But here's the wild part. Google just sat on it. They treated it mostly like an academic exercise. Meanwhile, a small, incredibly ambitious lab named OpenAI took that very architecture, stepped right into the unknown, and quietly lit a fuse that the rest of the world couldn't even see yet.
And OpenAI, they didn't just build one model and call it a day. They proved its trajectory. Right off the bat with GPT-1 in 2018, they showed that a single system could learn language broadly. Then, by 2019, GPT-2 was generating text that was so human-like, they literally delayed its release because they were terrified of misinformation. But the real magic? That hit in 2020. GPT-3 launched with a mind-blowing 175 billion parameters. Now, if you think of parameters as sort of the digital brain connections that dictate how smart an AI is, this was a massive evolutionary leap. I mean, it felt like magic. Startups were popping up overnight, and suddenly investors woke up and realized, okay, this is not just an academic research project anymore. This is the future. But the rest of the world? We truly woke up in late 2022. When ChatGPT dropped, it hit the tech industry like a massive earthquake. You had executives all over the globe calling it an iPhone moment. And just to put that into perspective for a second, it took the telephone 75 years to reach 50 million users, right? ChatGPT hit 100 million users in 2 months. 2 months! It became one of the fastest-growing consumer apps in human history. Everybody, students, writers, programmers, CEOs, they were all using it. So that transition from quiet, behind-closed-doors academic research to all-out corporate warfare, it happened in a matter of weeks.
And the sheer irony of this rivalry is just staggering. On one side, you have the disruptor, OpenAI, going toe-to-toe with the massive incumbent, Google. Now remember, Google literally invented the transformer technology that powers ChatGPT, yet almost overnight, they were suddenly seen as falling behind. The threat was so intense that Google's leadership declared an actual code red. They had to completely scramble, reorganize their massive empire, and hit the gas on their own model, Gemini, just to desperately fight for their crown as the undisputed king of tech.
But here's where it gets even more interesting. The biggest threat to OpenAI wasn't just coming from the outside. It was actually coming from inside their own house. Some former OpenAI employees grew deeply concerned that this crazy race for commercial dominance was completely overriding human safety. And hey, this matters to all of us, right? Because if these systems go rogue or get misused, the fallout is global. So those employees broke away and formed a new company called Anthropic. This created a massive schism in the industry, directly pitting Anthropic's model, Claude, against ChatGPT in this daily, high-stakes fight for enterprise trust and safe reasoning.
And that internal schism basically birthed the industry's biggest philosophical divide. So on one side, you have OpenAI and Google building what we call walled gardens, meaning they keep their most powerful models totally locked up and proprietary. But on the exact opposite side sits Meta. Mark Zuckerberg decided to take their Llama family of models and just unleash them to the public, literally handing the keys of high-powered AI to thousands of independent developers for free. And this wasn't just a simple product launch. This was a calculated strategy to build an open ecosystem that no single walled garden could ever hope to out-innovate. They essentially democratized AI for anyone with a decent laptop.
Right, so just as the tech giants thought they had the rules of this whole game figured out,
bam, a massive disruption hits out of nowhere. A company named DeepSeek completely shocked the entire industry. How? By proving that frontier-level artificial intelligence could actually be built with brutal efficiency and dramatically lower costs. Up until that point, everyone just assumed you needed hundreds of billions of dollars to even play in this league. DeepSeek shattered that assumption literally overnight, forcing every single rival into absolute panic mode, having to completely rethink their technical and financial strategies from the ground up.
But despite DeepSeek proving that efficiency is possible, the reality of the broader global race is still a game of staggering, almost unfathomable capital. We are literally talking about hundreds of billions of dollars being poured into this space. The world right now is building physical infrastructure on a scale we have rarely seen in human history. I mean, we've got massive data centers consuming the energy of small nations. And buying up compute power, that has transformed from just a standard corporate strategy into a matter of urgent national security for governments all over the world.
But while all these software companies like OpenAI, Google, and Meta were fighting this brutal, super public war for users and supremacy, there was one hardware company sitting right above the battlefield, quietly collecting attacks on every single move: NVIDIA. They are the ones selling the pickaxes in this digital gold rush. To give you an idea of the scale here, a single top-tier NVIDIA AI chip can cost upwards of $30,000 to $40,000. And companies aren't just buying one or two, they are buying them by the hundreds of thousands. By supplying the essential hardware required to train these massive models, NVIDIA provided the vital oxygen for the entire revolution, quietly becoming one of the most valuable companies on Earth.
Okay, so let's step back for a second and look at the scoreboard as it stands today. You've got OpenAI, who sparked the revolution and definitely holds the influence. You've got DeepSeek, who completely shattered the cost barrier, taking the win on efficiency. And of course, NVIDIA remains the undisputed king of the essential physical infrastructure. But you know what's crazy? The most important category on here isn't a company at all. The biggest looming threat to every single one of them is AGI, Artificial General Intelligence. That is the ultimate finish line they are all desperately sprinting toward right now. Because as we leap toward 2026, the goalposts are totally shifting. The era of the simple chatbot that just spits text back at you, that's dead. We are now entering the ecosystem of AI agents. The systems of tomorrow won't just talk, they are actually going to act. Just imagine an AI that doesn't just, draft an email for you, but analyzes complex documents, writes the underlying code, and then autonomously executes a multi-step scientific workflow on your behalf while you're fast asleep. We are rapidly moving from a tool that helps you think to an agent that actually does the work for you. When we take a step back and really look at this entire journey, from that quiet little research paper in 2017 to the autonomous agents we're seeing approaching in 2026, it is just staggering. 8 years. That's all it took to permanently change the trajectory of human history. Decades from now, historians are going to look back at this tiny window of time, not just as a period of cool software updates, but as the literal birth of a new technological era. An era every bit as foundational as the discovery of electricity or the invention of the internet itself. Which leaves us with one incredibly provocative question, right? We spent this entire explainer talking about human corporate rivalries, human CEOs, human developers, and human investors all fighting for dominance. But as these models evolve from simple tools into autonomous agents that are capable of their own research, coding, and logical reasoning, what happens to the global tech race when the AI becomes smart enough to start running the race itself? Seriously, think about that for a second. Everything we've covered today, the billions of dollars, the fierce rivalries, those incredible breakthroughs, it's not the end of the story. It is merely the prologue. This competition is only accelerating, and the rules of how we work, how we learn, and how we live are literally being rewritten in real time. The massive global AI race continues, and ready or not, it is a race we are all now running in